What is going on, guys? Welcome to Test This Tech. And today, as you can see, bro, I got a Steam Deck, bro. And this is the LCD Steam Deck. It's the 256 gigabyte version. And I want to go through, I've had some time to, I had to set it up and everything. I've done some emulation on there. And I do want to go over my experience with the Steam Deck. This is the first Steam Deck that I've purchased, so didn't get the OLED. Amazon had these for $394 very quickly because it went out. It sold out pretty quickly. So, is the Steam Deck all that it's crept up to be? Is it the one and done device? In some ways, yes, but also having a lot of patience is really needed for something like this, because we have to remember, while it does provide an excellent experience when it comes to playing the device, it is still an x86 handheld, meaning it is a PC first before being a gaming console. So these are the things that I ran into. So when I very first opened it, and I very first tried to install or turn it on, let the it load and everything. And then there was an update and it would load, and then it gave me an error and said that the update did not work or did not go through. So I said, okay, so there's some type of corruption or something happened. And then I tried it again and then it went through. But when it comes to the Steam Deck, ergonomically, this is incredible. I think ergonomically, this is the most comfortable PC handheld device that you are going to at least right now. Right now, this dollars to donuts, it's much more comfortable to me versus the ROG Ally, versus any other handheld that I've used when it comes to these types. And I've held some of the other ones like the Legion Go and all that. This just destroys it. However, from a build perspective, now keep in mind, this is the LCD one, okay? I feel like the Steam Deck OLED is built a little better. There's some finickiness to the LCD Steam Deck. For example, when I would power on the device, typically when I power on the device, say for like the ROG Ally, if I press the power button, it does a vibration, it turns on, the screen, and then I can let go of the power button. Sometimes when you're pressing the power button in the Steam Deck, you don't know when it's actually going to turn on. And then when it does turn on, if you hold on the power button too much, it'll cut off, right? So I found that to be weird, because typically that should be just, that should be Tech 101, right? If you turn on a power button, you shouldn't have to guess when you have to let go of the power button. So I actually ran into some issues on that. One of the biggest issues that I had, annoyances, I should say, and I will say, I actually had to reinstall SteamOS on this because I feel like it was so buggy. It was kind of freezing a bit. And again, it probably was because the update didn't fully go through and probably bypassed it, but it didn't update the SteamOS appropriately. So that's why I had to reinstall it. I had to reinstall it. So when it comes to the device, that's what I was going to say. So one of the biggest issues that I had with this is that there's a pre-built-in keyboard for the Steam software, right? There's a built-in keyboard for this. So if I'm searching, if I'm searching on the store, for example, it's going to pull up the store, and I can type in a game. It's going to pull up the keyboard, right? No issue there. The problem, however, is that there's no specific built-in virtual embedded keyboard on the device where it's immediately available to use without you having to turn it on. So I'll switch to desktop mode, and I'll show you guys what I'm referring to. And this might be fixed from the Steam Deck OLED. I'm not 100% sure. Okay. So So if I go to Firefox, for example, that's the one thing too. The trackpad, while it is responsive and probably one of the better trackpads, it's not perfect. Sometimes you're not sure when you're actually clicking on the trackpad or not. So when I'm clicking on this, you'll realize it doesn't pull up any type of keyboard. There's no embedded keyboard for Linux for the desktop mode. You have to turn on the core keyboard app through the Discover Center. So that is annoying, right? I'm not really accustomed to that. I'm used to Windows having the virtual keyboard from the ROG Ally. I'm used to that. So having to activate the core keyboard, right? I have to launch it to turn it on. I have to go back, and then I can type in, whatever I need to type in, and then it'll activate. But it's very annoying that I have to even do that. I can't even click on this, right? It's very annoying that I have to do that in order to use the keyboard, right? Like if I was using Windows, I wouldn't have to do this, right? So I'll just type anything. Yeah, so see, now it's typing. But, obviously if you're using a Windows handheld, see, I don't even know what's happening here. I'll just hide this. And this is kind of the finickiness that I'm referring to. And it could be just me being old too. But yeah, so there's no built-in virtual keyboard that's embedded within Linux. If there is, let me know. But that was a huge annoyance for me. So you do have to plug this in to a keyboard, or whatnot, to kind of search what you want to search if you want to be in desktop mode. And I think it's mainly because, sorry guys, 1 second. Sorry about that. And I think it's mainly because that this is just really designed, for Steam, which obviously I understand that, right? But when it comes to the desktop notion of it, it's just not, it's not its best self. It's not its best self. So I had to reinstall this. I had to reinstall Steam OS. And what I realized, first I used a flash drive. I used a flash drive and went through the install process. And then it gave me an error, some type of error where I wasn't able to, I guess I have access to the kernel or something of that degree. But what I did is that I flashed SteamOS on a micro SD card, a reliable one. And then when I booted that into it, it actually, it worked very fast. The repair was fast. And this is a much better version of SteamOS than my experience from the one that was just, of course, on the device. So that crisis was averted, if you will. Now my trackpad isn't working. I don't know, but yeah. So as far as for the device, when it comes to the games, when it comes to actually just playing the games in general, it is incredible. I love how the directional button is next to the analog sticks. At first I wasn't sure if this was going to be something that I would like as far as it being on the side there. It is so comfortable. Talking about battery life and talking about the screen. So as far as for battery life, I was actually very impressed with the battery life of this device. Now, the thing is that, as I mentioned in my prior video, PC gaming handhelds, you're going to run into an issue with battery life if you want to run high-end titles. If you're trying to run Battlefield 6 or Cyberpunk or the finals, it's going to be a nightmare. But if you do some, older games, right? Half-Life 2, if you do some emulation titles, you're going to get a decent chunk of battery life out of this. And then actually the battery life is actually very surprisingly good on this, because when I went through the process of I had to transfer, my games onto the SD card, and that took about a good 48 minutes, right? 48 minutes to do that. But the battery life was at like maybe 70%. And I thought that was very good, just because if I was using the ROG Ally, it would have been, I would have had to plug it into a wall. That's how bad the battery is for the ROG Ally. So the fact that it was doing the install, I was waiting for the file transfers and all that stuff, and it still gave me a decent amount of battery life afterwards, I thought that was very impressive. But so just don't expect to play a high-end title and to get 5-10 hours. It's just not going to happen. Lastly, obviously, Steam Deck LCD, Steam Deck OLED. Everyone obviously always recommends the Steam Deck OLED. Yes, you do get better battery life. Yes, it is a nicer looking screen, but there's nothing really, to me, there's nothing really wrong with the LCD screen. There are specific technical issues probably with it. If you're really looking and being picky and comparing it to other screens, like I think one of the things is like a light bleed. But there isn't, I don't see anything on this screen where I say, this is way too distracting. I can't even use this device. Not for this model. And maybe this is a newer LCD model, but I don't have any experience like that. So yeah, I think this is a fine screen. And for the 256 model, I think it's still worth it to get this version of the Steam Deck, in my opinion. Now, if you're a fan of OLED, you're used to OLED, obviously, that is your right. But there's nothing wrong with this LCD for the Steam Deck, in my personal opinion. I think if you were to get the OLED, I think the casing of the device is better. From my understanding, the OLED casing of the device is better, because if this feels slightly finicky when it comes to the power button and whatnot, sometimes these are activated, sometimes these are not activated, so sometimes the controls work, sometimes they don't. It just depends on, and the thing is that it is switching from desktop mode, not desktop mode, but it's not saying anything, and you have to activate it obviously through the, big picture mode or the desktop mode. It's not as fluid or convenient as the ROG Ally. So the ROG Ally does that better, I would say. The ROG Ally has the Z1 Extreme chip. So technically, I would say it runs SteamOS even a little faster than the Steam Deck, but you're never going to get battery life like the Steam Deck. You're never going to get the ergonomics like the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is in a really unique position where you're going to get an emulation experience that's top tier. You're going to get more of a modernized experience that's going to be top tier because of ergonomics, battery life. These speakers are great. These are really nice speakers. Are they as good as the ROG Ally or the MSI Claw? I would say no, but they are very good. They're better than any Android gaming handheld device. These blow all those out of the water, So yeah, I would say if you're spending under $400, I would say the Steam Deck LCD is worth it. So I don't want to make this too long. I just want to give my thoughts on this. I will do a separate video as far as for specifics of what the ROG Ally does better than the Steam Deck, vice versa. Anyway, JPal, Test This Tech. I'll catch you guys next video. Thanks a lot.